Hey guys, Bill Blanchard here, and today I want to show you a simple way to add HA to an RGB image using PixelMath. This process of adding HA to an RGB image, this is really good for guys who shoot DSLR, who have a whole bunch of RGB data, and then say you get a little clip-in HA filter, and then you want to add that data to your RGB, or even if you're shooting, dedicated astronomy cameras where you're just wanting to add HA into an RGB image. But mainly for guys who shoot galaxies, because adding HA to an RGB image on a galaxy is really cool. So when I started this project, I thought this would be an easy thing for me to do, but it's actually very complicated and it involves a lot of math. You see, adding HA to the red channel of an RGB image, it's not easy because HA is typically done at different exposure times, so the brightness levels are going to be different to that of the red channel of RGB. So creating a blend is one thing, but just because you're blending in data from HA to RGB red doesn't necessarily mean you're going to see it very well. So trying to make all of this look good and make it very user friendly, it was quite the task. But the processes that I come up with, I think you're going to like them, especially the part when I get into galaxies, where you're adding the HA areas of galaxies onto an RGB image. So before I go any further, I would like to discuss some of the processes that we may have done in the past before I get into my processes. But most importantly, I would like to discuss the different color spaces that we have the ability to work in, because we can take advantage of these color spaces. And a lot of us have actually used these different color spaces and may not have even known it. So for example, let me open this up. This is your basic RGB workspace where you got blue, green, and red, and that creates the colors. It really is a three-dimensional cube. And however, whatever these values are for red and blue and green will actually make a color for you. But controlling the brightness or what you want to see in an image is actually very difficult to do in this workspace. So there's other workspaces like HSV, which is basically it's the same thing, but it's actually working in more of a cylindrical shape where you're not dealing with the RGB. These actually will create this type of color space, but you can actually change the hue or saturation or the lightness value to control what you want to see on your image and also the colors. The same thing goes for the lab color space. And we actually use this quite a bit, and you probably don't even know it. But in this color space, anything with brightness, if you have a luminosity of 0, for example, you won't see anything. And if you have something that's up high, you'll actually start to see the colors. But in this color space, you're dealing with the A channel and the B channel, which goes from green to red and to yellow to blue. And then based on the chroma, which is actually another value, it's C, that's more of the saturation control of this color space. It just gives you a lot more ability to do different things. So here's another example. So this is the L-RGB combination, and you've probably used this before in the past. So if you've collected a luminance data and you're trying to add it to your RGB data, or say you want to use HA as luminance to your RGB data, this is typically the process that you use. But there's actually no lightness property of the RGB color space. So one of the reasons why we actually use HSV or lab color space is so that we can actually take advantage of changing the original lightness of that image to the new lightness, which would be either, again, the new luminance data that you collected or, say, HA that you want to use as well, because your lightness is actually going to dictate what you see. So that's the advantage of a color space like this, is these colors, once you know what these colors are, and we can convert everything from here to here, all we got to do is replace the original lightness value with the new one, and that's actually going to dictate what we're going to see on our new image. So just reiterate, whenever you use something like L-RGB combination, it's actually doing the conversion for you. It's actually converting the RGB data over to lab, replacing the lightness, and then converting it back to RGB. So anyways, that's how this works, and I thought I'd share it with you. But also, like when you get into like curve adjustments and you see the L value A, B, C, H, S, this is all this workspace. So when you add saturation to an image, you can use these curves, but you can also add saturation using the C value here. The A and B again is is this color space right here. And if I move this to the side, if we wanted to just control the hue or saturation, both will use the same lightness. But that's kind of how all this works. So you're actually working in an RGB workspace, you're actually working in HSV, and you're also working in lab. All right, so let me close this down and then we'll get into the actual process. So I've got a couple examples. Let me bring in these two here. So I've got some RGB data of M16, the Eagle Nebula, and I also have some HA data as well. All right, so one thing I want to do is I'm going to go ahead and extract the RGB channels from the RGB data. And as you can see on the blue channel, there is quite a bit of oxygen in this nebula, and you'll see that here in a minute whenever we add the lightness. But the green I'm going to get rid of. So here we got the red and we got our HA, and this is what we want to blend together. Now, as you can see, you can actually see some differences, and I mean, obviously, the biggest difference is the star sizes are a lot smaller in HA, and we're going to take advantage of that in my PixelMath. So that's going to be pretty cool. You guys will love that. But anyways, you can actually see a noticeable difference between the data. So trying to get these scaled right so that we can actually do the blend, it's very important. And again, that's what I'm doing in my PixelMath. But what I wanted to show you real fast is, let me just go ahead and lower this, is I ran a little, I created a little PixelMath script right here, which is just going to add the HA to this image and nothing else, just because I want you to see what it looks like just by adding the colors and nothing else. So let me run this. All right, so as you can see, there's not really a big change. All of this data here was just added to here. So let me go before, after, before, after. Now that's kind of disappointing. One of the reasons why is anytime that you add data into another data set, you have to add the lightness or that luminosity in order for you to see it. Because again, this is going to dictate what you see here. Okay, so before I get into my stuff, I'm going to show you two methods that you've probably used in the past, but we went ahead and added the HA here. So for example, if I go to the LRGB and my data is named HA, it's already in here. If I just drag this over, so now that I just dragged that over, now you can actually see the data that we just added to it, and it really pops. And you can also see that it brought out a lot of the blue that's hidden in there as well. So this is our blue channel, but when you use the LRGB combination, you're using this lightness, but it's also going to bring out the other colors that are hidden, within this data. So what I want to do is I'm just going to make a copy of this, because I'm going to show you the other way, and then I'm going to get into my processes. Okay, so let me just hit undo. Now the other way of doing this is using, so the LRGB is again the lab color space. So another method of adding the lightness of the HA over to an RGB image is actually doing it in the other color space, which is HSV. So one thing that I can do is I can come over here to channel extract, switch it to HSV. I'm going to go ahead and extract these channels. And then I'm going to disregard the V channel, which is the lightness. So that's the extracted lightness here. And now that these are extracted, I'm just going to bring these down. And if you go into, we don't need color extraction anymore. Now, if you go to color combination, you're going to use the H and the S, the original H and S values. But then for the V value, which is our lightness, we're actually going to use the HA. So if I bring this over, you can actually see it added the HA lightness. Now, one thing that you're going to notice when you look at this data, and this is one of the reasons, so there's advantages and disadvantages. So the HSV is actually going to kind of maintain more of the right colors in the image. Well, it actually looks like that, but I'll explain why in a minute. And it's just because even though it added the brightness, the whole color space, it just works completely different. Whereas in this one, which is the lab color space, it's actually making things a lot brighter. But you actually get more detail when you use the lab color space than you do in this. And not to mention, you get these really weird, funky looking stars. So whenever you are dealing with the HSV, when you do this color combination, yeah, the colors look right, but then the stars look messed up. And anyways, it's a way of doing it. And if you look at these colors here, it just, ugh, I don't like it. But anyways, those are the main two ways of controlling the lightness. Yeah, this one doesn't look as good. This one's I like the best. And also, if you look, the way the HSV works around stars, it's it doesn't look as good. You tend to get these halos, as you can see here. So yeah. So what I'm going to do is, we don't need that anymore. And I'm going to undo my changes, get back to the raw. Actually, I'm going to take the red out, or the HA out. And now we're going to get into my processes. And this is the part you guys are really going to like. All right, so in the description below is the download link to my processes. So just to show you, let me delete these off. So once you download them, you're just going to drag this over to your desktop, and boom, there you have it. All right, so real fast, just so I'm transparent, these images here, they are non-linear, and they have been processed a little bit. So where is my processes? So just to show you, with the RGB image, all I did, and this is literally all I did, I just did a dynamic crop, did a background neutralization, did the image solver, because the layest update of PixelMath has completely changed the way we do the color calibration. And I did the spectrophotometric color calibration, and then I used my link stretch to stretch the data. And after that, I did a noise exterminator and just did some saturation curves just to bring out some of the colors. So the narrowband processing, very similar. I just did a star alignment. That way this data matches this. And then I did an unlinked stretch using my stretching math processes. And that's in another video on my channel. Did noise exterminator, did a little bit of HDR, multi-scale transform, some sharpening, and some curves. Nothing major. I just wanted to get something put together to show you the difference between the before and after, especially with the contrast. So my processes. So as you can see, you got 4 icons over here. And the first one is called HA to RGB Nebula Simple version. Okay. So I wanted to create something just very simple, but when I actually started going down this rabbit hole, I had to create an advanced version. And when we get to some more samples, you're going to understand why. The simple version, it is just a drag and drop thing, but there is a very important thing that you guys have to know. Because you're adding HA to an RGB image, the image has to be called HA, big H, little a. And the reason behind that is there's some limitations with PixelMath, the PixelMath, and you can't change, like I'm using a process of using like the average deviation or finding the median value of an image. You can't find the median value of an image if there's already an equation behind it. So it has to reference the actual image name. And unfortunately, that's just the way it's got to be right now until PixInsight continues to progress PixelMath. Then I can give you guys the ability to have a different name by changing the name in the code. But when you open up the PixelMath, you can actually see, important for this to work, your HA image must be named HA. And what I've also done is I've given you a brightness control. So what I'm doing is if you remember my other video on the narrowband normalization, well, what I'm doing is I'm normalizing the HA data to that of the red channel so that we can get it to scale right. And then what I'm doing is I'm taking that difference and then adding it back to the red channel. So that's adding the HA that's there. And there's a reason why I'm adding that difference, because whenever you're doing imaging of, say, a nebula that's more of a reflection nebula with some HA, we don't want to kill all of the what's there on the red. We actually want some of that data, so some of that may not show up on the HA and vice versa. So what I'm doing, instead of just finding the difference, I'm actually screening the difference in. So I'm actually unscreening the HA to the red channel and then screening it back onto the red channel. And it does the combination really well. And then what I'm doing is I'm having to convert everything from RGB over to the lab color space. And then I'm replacing the HA data, which is the new lightness. And then I'm having to reconvert it back over to the RGB. So as long as your HA channel or your HA data is named properly, all I'm going to do, oh, and I have this set to create a new image, but if, for this example, I'm just going to replace it. Okay, so there we have it. So because we're using the lightness of the HA, you can see that the star bloat went away. Undo. Before, after, before, after. Now let's zoom in to the stars. Oops. After, before, after. So look at all that detail popping out. And the stars actually look really nice as well. But now let's go into this area here. Before, after. Now, again, you can see that the brightness has actually increased. That's just the way that the lab formula works. So what I've done in the math is I've created a way where we can actually control the brightness of the lightness image that we're using here, which is the HA. But I just wanted to show you guys this because, you know, the stars, I mean, they look quite good compared to, I mean, let me move it over here. So before, after. All that detail just, it really pops, okay? But what if you didn't want that brightness to be that high? As you can see, we do have some areas that are blown out. So what I've done is I'm going to decrease this down to like 0.7, which is like 70%. All right. So with the brightness decrease, you can see now I'm not blown out on my red. The colors look pretty good. I mean, my stars look great. And the way the brightness controls are, it actually will do a little bit of star reduction by default. But a lot of these areas that you couldn't see before, after, before, after. So yeah, I mean, it really starts to pop. And man, I just like I really like the way these star colors come out. So why did I create an advanced option? Okay. For many reasons. There's a few. One, I wanted a way to be able to add the HA from, say, a galaxy over, you know, onto an RGB image, but you don't want to use the luminosity, or I'm sorry, the lightness of the HA on your RGB image, because then it's going to kill all your detail um, on your RGB image. And I'll get to that example here in a minute after I show you more of this example here of M16. So one of the reasons why I had to create an advanced option is, as an example, and this ain't going to show up on this data here, but what if you had tilt on your HA data? Say your RGB data looked fine, but your HA data actually had some tilt. Because your lightness is actually going to dictate what you see on your HA image, you're actually going to see that tilt transfer over as well. Also, I wanted better ways of controlling the brightness on an image, but I also wanted the ability to be able to do galaxies. So when you're dealing with nebula, we want to see this HA lightness because that's going to bring out that detail. But when you're dealing with a galaxy, you don't. You actually want the lightness of the RGB. We just want to add that the HA difference between the HA and the red channel over to that lightness so that we can see it that way. And after this example here, I'll show you more of that of the galaxy. If you want to run the advanced, the code is actually very similar, but let me just click on it. But you have more controls. So one of the, I wouldn't say it's an unfortunate thing. Let me undo this. But in order to really get into these advanced options, unfortunately, we're going to have to create a starless image of the RGB and then one of the HA. So just like with some of the other tools that I've done on my channel, I've created two little tools. One's called Starless RGB, one's called Starless HA. That's going to create the file structure that we're going to need. So let me just drag the RGB one over here. And then I will do the same thing for the HA. And then I'm going to go ahead and minimize this HA because we don't really need it anymore. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run Star Exterminator on both of these, and then I'll show you the process. All right, so now I've got my Starless HA and my Starless RGB. And one thing I would like to say real fast is I know you're tempted to start like doing sharpening and all that stuff on your HA image while it's starless. You actually can't do that with this process, and it's just because I am screening the stars on and off in the math. So what I'm doing is I'm giving you a choice to use the lightness of the HA stars or the RGB stars. So if your original HA data, you know, it looks good, but your stars are jacked up, well, we don't have to use the stars, but we can still use the HA data. We'll just unscreen the lightness off of the RGB data and then put them back on the lightness of, of the image, and then put it back, and then we'll do the blend here on the RGB. So I know that sounds complicated, but you'll see why here in a minute. So just don't do any modifications to this. It's better to actually get your HA data situated before you do any of this stuff anyways. So I'm going to go ahead and minimize these because I don't need them on my screen. So here's the options that we have. Now we've got nebula mode or galaxy mode. Well, this is a nebula, so we're going to keep it at 0. 0 is for nebula mode. Star mode. 0 is going to use the RGB stars, and and using value 1 is going to be the HA stars. Now, again, that's just the lightness. We're still using the colors, but we have the choice to use the lightness, and I'll show you the example here in a second. We also have a brightness control. So the brightness control is actually linearly stretching the lightness data. So what that does is when the stars are removed, we're actually we can actually change the brightness of the lightness itself, and then we add the stars back on. So you're not losing any of the star brightness, but you have the ability to dial down the brightness of your lightness. So in the earlier example, when I did the simple example, when we initially ran it, there was areas that were kind of blown out. Well, you can change this similar to what we're doing here. we're just doing it a little bit different in the brightness control because we're actually doing a linear stretch. And then we've got the HA strength. So this is primarily used for like when we're in galaxy mode, and I'll show you why. But we have the ability to stretch. If you wanted to see more of that HA data, I'm giving you the ability to do this, and I'm doing it in a curve stretch. So whatever that difference is between the red channel and the HA channel is I'm giving it a boost, but it's a nonlinear boost. So let's just run the defaults here, and I'll just drag this over. Okay, so what you can see here is it's very bright, and actually the reds have kind of blown out just a little bit. But if you look at the stars, if we go before and after, we kept the original brightness of that of the RGB stars. So if I go to, and don't worry about the colors just yet, we'll actually change that here in the brightness. But if we actually change the star mode to 1 and use the HA stars, you're going to see the star sizes decrease because the HA star sizes are smaller than the RGB. All right, so for this next example, let me undo this. And this will change in this next example, and I'll show you, because it comes out really, really bright. But for this example, we're actually going to choose to pick the HA stars. I also created a blend where it's actually blending just the HA stars by themselves with the RGB star lightness. And so you're kind of like picking a point in the middle. But again, you know, but the before and after, you can see that the star sizes are the same, but the HA detail comes in. We just need to tone down the brightness a little bit. But now let's just go ahead and replace the HA stars. And what we'll do is let's just decrease the brightness to say 0.8. All right, and then I just drag this over. All right. So as you can see, now the brightness has kind of toned everything down. Things are they're not saturated. Now we got the HA lightness for the stars. So if you go before, after, before, after, I mean, the star sizes are a lot smaller. The saturation is still there. The colors are nice. So the brightness was toned down, and it was toned down linearly. Whereas when we use the simple mode, it's actually using a curve stretch. But if I wanted to go back and do the RGB stars with the same brightness value, the data is still going to look the same. It's just we're going to have you know, the bigger star sizes. So I just wanted to show you how these controls work. So before, after, and this is what it looks like at the same brightness levels, but using the RGB star brightness. And you can see the star sizes are bigger, but the data, it's all the same, just different. It's just a way of having different stars. Same star color, just different lightness for these. Yeah, so you kind of get your star reduction whenever you choose the HA stars. But if you wanted to use a blend, you can do that as well. So before I get into the strength, because I'm going to show you that on the galaxy mode, I do want to show you just a couple more real quick examples of nebula. So this next example is the Flaming Star Nebula, and this is part of a mosaic thing that I'm working on. So I just grabbed this for demonstration purposes. Here is the HA. Let me drag this out. So as you can see, the stars, of course, with the HA are a lot smaller. You got a lot of nebulosity in here. So yeah, let's see what this looks like. And you got some reflection nebula going on in here with your emission. But we're going to use the advanced mode, and I'm going to go ahead and just pick the HA stars for right now. And we'll just go with the default brightness. So unlike the M16 that I showed you earlier that had a lot of O3, and because the HA was so bright, I don't have to tone it down as much just based on looking at this HA data. So I'm just going to run with this, and let's see what it looks like. And there we go. So before, after, before, after. And then look at these stars. I mean, they're nice, nice in color. So before, after, and that's a really huge star reduction, just by using the HA. So you do kind of get a bit of a blue color, around some of these blue stars. So you do have to be careful. And that's another reason why I put this blend mode. So I'll show you that example right now. But before, let's just kind of go into this area here. And you can see nice star colors, a lot of detail. But look at it before. Before, after. Before, after. But if you want to look at the comparison, just this is what it looks like with the HA stars. This is what it looks like with a blend. And this is just the regular RGB stars. All right, so here's some data that I got from my buddy Luke. This is actually some data that his girlfriend Chloe Burrows took of IC63. Here's what the HA data looks like. So this is a bit of a reflection nebula and a mission nebula. So whenever I run, I'll just run the simple on it. And it created the image. And as you can see, this is what it looked like before. And this is what it looked like after. And these are just the stock settings on the simple. But again, if you wanted to have more control over the brightness, you can do a lot of that, just in the advanced. But that's before and after. The stars came out really nice in this as well. So let me show you another example. So this next example is my favorite, and this is for all you guys who do galaxy processing where you're adding HA regions to your RGB data from your galaxy. I've got some data here of M31. This is just basic processing, so don't beat me up. I actually just followed the same thing here, just trying to keep things simple, stupid. But I also have HA data, which is right here. So you can see, in fact, let me just go ahead and just pull up the starless, because you can really see these HA regions pop. So look at all this detail, all these HA regions here, and here's your starless. So whenever you're doing this galaxy HA transfer thing, it has to be done in the advanced mode. But if you look at these areas here, I mean, man, these really come out, really nice. Let me just share the same view. And you don't see any of this in your basic RGB data. So this is what we're going to try and add over. So let me just minimize these. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up this. And again, I've already created the file structure for the the starless images. I mean, as you can see, starless RGB. So all these are created. So all we need to do is just add them over here. Now I got to change this to 1 for galaxy mode. And for this example, I'll go ahead and just use the HA stars, just so we have a little bit of star reduction. The brightness, I'm just going to keep the same, and the strength, I'm just going to keep the same for right now. And then once we do this, then I can add in some HA strength. But yeah, check this out. So I'm just going to drag this over. All right. So before, after, before, after. Now let's zoom in. Before, after, before, after. So all you can see, all these HA regions right here just kind of popped up, and yeah, I mean, this galaxy has a lot of them actually. The triangle actually has a lot of HA areas as well. But before, after, and you can see the star sizes are changing. They're shrinking down a little bit. Before, after. There's a HA region here, and you got another one here. Before, after. There's another one out here. Before, after. And if you really want these to pop, you can just add a little bit more saturation after the fact. But I'm going to undo this. And now let's just increase it. So 1.3, that's like a 30% increase. So we're going to make the HA areas, actually, let's just crank it up a little bit more. Let's crank it up to 0.5. So again, this is a curve stretch that we're doing just on the HA itself. And then we're screening that HA back onto the red channel of the RGB and also the lightness of the original lightness of the RGB. So let me just drag this over. And there we go. So now these areas are really popping out. So before, after, before, after. And what I'll do is I'll just add a little bit of saturation. Might be a little too much, but you can see these areas popping out quite a bit now. And then also another thing that you can do is I could have done this. So there was already saturation in the original image right here. You can actually take out some of that saturation, then add your HA, and then saturate after the fact. And then these are going to come out really nice and red. So let me just do that real fast. All right, so I took the saturation out of M31 and I recreated the starless image. So I'll just get this out of the way, and then I will add the HA. Now that the HA is added, I can start adding the saturation after the fact. Maybe one more time. Might be a little too much on that last one. But now that you can see that the red is starting to pop out quite a bit right there. So yeah, it's actually better to add the HA before you do the saturation if you're really wanting to get these HA regions to pop color-wise. But yeah, and now that this is done, you guys can color correct however you want. I know a lot of people make this thing look super blue and all that stuff, but anyways, that's how this works. It's pretty straightforward. You got a simple version, and then you got the advanced version. The advanced one just gives you more options, more controls when it comes to brightness, the star shapes, and the advanced one also has the galaxy control as well. But anyways, that's what I have right now for the HA, or adding HA to RGB. Please give it a shot. Let me know what you guys think. Feel free to comment, whether it's good, bad. I'm here to always make things better. This is kind of like I'm not a YouTuber. I suck at making videos and stuff like this, but I'm making these tools that kind of help our processing needs. But I kind of look at this like a GitHub. So we're here to get ideas, put it together, and create a product out of it. So if there's any type of enhancements, this is the way to do it. And I already know what you're thinking. You're probably thinking, oh, can you add O3 now that we added HA? But to be honest with you, it's better. I already have the process for that. You just do the narrowband normalization with your HOO or your SHO data, and then use my RGB star transfer. You just add the stars that way. So for HA, it's easier to do it this way. But if you've got a few more narrowband channels, just use my other processes that adds the RGB stars to the narrowband data. But anyways, thanks for watching. I really hope that you guys watched all the way to the end of this. And hopefully this helps. So yeah, thanks.